education, and how is education going to affect the post-pandemic world in the most positive and in the most negative of its aspects and its reactions or actions that it does. Till now, we've had people coming in from all across the world. We're trying to bring a variety and a mix of people who come in from a rural background, from an urban background, and from all kinds of demographic and economic variations as much as possible, so that the kind of research and kind of content that we create has relevance beyond borders, beyond demographics, beyond economics, beyond money, and actually has some scalable, feasible, acceptable, and receptive idea on innovation in education. Today, we are all here with some of the best speakers from all across the world to share their opinions on how would a future school look like. This typically is a bilingual platform, so we can use English and Hindi, two of the languages on this. If you use a third language, there's no problem. I won't get it. That's the only issue. But you can use it. But try sticking to English first and then Hindi. In the coming 60 minutes that we have with us, we'll try to know that how would the schools evolve, because the way we understand it, the way we define it, the way we have actually structured it, all those definitions, all those words, all those texts have actually already been obliterated. They do not exist anymore, because the institution that we are looking at that will reopen once these lockdowns and these sanitization and safety measures go off, that institution would need a completely new definition. Just some days back, we had one school leader come in from Odisha. They run an institute called Kalinga Institute, where they teach nearly 50,000 tribal children on one single campus, and they do not charge any fees from them. Their principal shared a very nice statement that a school is a place where society finds its definition and learns to come together, and now we are supposed to teach them a paradox of social distancing. We do understand that there's physical distancing and social distancing, but as of now, with teachers wearing their masks, a lot of content delivery through expression and emotion getting limitized, how do we see a school reopening? So once again, thank you so much for taking out the time and being here with us with Blub World, and welcome all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 77th episode. Today we have experts coming in from 3 or 4 different fields to add 3 or 4 different colors or aspects of flavors to the whole discussion. We have guests who will tell us the perspective of how would schooling and education change with e-learning, how would publishing books or the way we read, understand, and deliver content change, how would coaching or enabling that extra edge on education, how will that change, how would the investor's mindset or the financial model of a school change, and how does higher education look at schools once this pandemic gets over? So a very warm welcome to all our guests. I would first like to invite somebody who has actually got up early and taken the effort to be on this call. A very warm welcome to Mrs. Claudia Bickford-Smith, Director of Education Services for Oxford University Press from Oxford, United Kingdom. Claudia, over to you to initiate the session on how do you think the future school would look like.
Good evening, everybody from the UK. It's actually lunchtime here, so it's not too bad. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to address where Oxford University Press, and I think a lot of the publishing industry is going here in trying to interpret what the pandemic means, what school closures are moving entire education systems online, where systems were not designed for whole system change. What opportunities, what challenges that's throwing up for us as publishers, as we seek to add more services for schools. So beyond just content, beyond just books. And I'm going to draw on some of the findings of academics who look back and who are looking forward that we're considering as we look at systemic change ourselves. So what are the lessons we can learn, and what does this mean for future systems of schools? And what does the research tell us? So there was a learning crisis before COVID-19, and according to the World Bank, learning poverty is now even worse with the digital divide. I'm sure some of you will pick up on that later. What does this mean for technology and the traditional classroom? Can we integrate? Can we take an education system and reframe it so that distance education is integrated into the schooling system? And in that way, can we create schools for the future? There's a widespread belief, I think we all have this, that digital technology can lead to general improvement or even transformation in areas of society. And so what's this mean for education? How optimistic should we be? But what are the barriers at the same time in creating these future schools? We've observed that the last 20 years really has not seen radical transformation of educational practices in classrooms until now, until COVID-19, when whole systems have been forced to go online. So again, where are we now? In assuming that digital technology is a good thing, I think there's some naivety here. So certainly academic research warns us that where we believe that technology can correct where, for example, learning outcomes are failing to be achieved, technology can't always solve that problem. Technology can't always solve non-technological problems, and that we should avoid conflating the two, that technical fixes can't, for example, solve where you've got unequal access to education anyway in a particular context. But a more positive light is thrown on technology through the research of Professor Neil Selwyn, and we're looking closely at what he's saying from Monash University in Australia. And I'm sure, again, this will be picked up on later. So where OUP is looking at technology is in improving a range of core processes for schooling, where we're adding extra services. So the benefits of scale and scope and speed and synchronicity, so online courses, we could overcome deep-rooted problems there in education around access. So that's the one thing. We know that technology can support a wide range of cognitive benefits, and this really interests us in where we're developing new courses, where we're going to focus on higher order thinking skills, for example. Technology can really push that, and we know that through the PISA assessments, where they are all online, and they really, really push kids into the higher order thinking spectrum. But also technology can provide low-level skills. For example, lots of practice around spelling or the times table. So it can do both. It can provide collaborative learning opportunities for the learners. So we want to develop courses that really encourage collaborative learning through virtual communities, and actually the collation of what we're calling collective knowledge, where kids can learn with learners and they can actually practice together. So the peer learning is really important for us to observe. All of this can lead to the improvement of general educational outcomes, can increase standards, exam results, retention rates, and progression for kids. It can break down those barriers around learning opportunities. Kids can have flexible options. They can flex their courses. They can have cheaper, reliable access to content on an anytime, any place basis. And interesting for us, we want to see what technology can do in terms of transforming new ways of learning that have never existed before. So COVID-19 for us is going to be an interesting research to look at how things are changing and whether for the better or for the worse, what challenges and opportunities are there for us. With teachers, we're assuming technology lifts admin load from them. And again, we're quite interested in helping teachers have more time to spend with their learners. Again, technology can provide more professional development opportunities for them. And again, looking at opportunities to provide online learning communities for teachers is something very important to us. And lastly, I really like someone called Professor Carey's vision. Again, where does technology fundamentally alter the way that society is creating knowledge? And what's this mean for publishers? What's it mean for learners who are going to be networked in the way that they've never been networked before, connected to global and local communities? I think all of that provides us with a very compelling vision for future schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. You gave a very detailed picture of how would publishing, content creation, and creation of knowledge would change. To summarize what you said, that learning crisis to learning poverty. At this point, we're actually facing that. And the divide, the digital divide that we have right now is really something very, very big to be actually looked into, because in India, if you talk about the rural India only has 25% network population, not even internet population. Nearly 55,000 villages are blacked out. They do not have that kind of network or internet access that is needed. Reframing education systems to integrate distance learning, because that's something that should now be accepted more and more, like the way India accepted work from home. which we were not comfortable with before the pandemic, but now we are quite comfortable with it. Tech cannot solve non-tech problems. What we perceive right now after, and what we can understand after talking to these many school leaders, is most of the ed tech that we are using at the moment, we are not solving education issues through it. We are solving communication issues through it. So we are actually using tech just on the cusp of it. We're not getting deep into it. Then he also quoted research from Professor Neil Selman from Australia: cognitive benefits from technology. High order skills can now be actually thought on. There's one utopian dream that just got realized for all the educators. We wanted to teach value education. And yes, this lockdown proved to be a great opportunity for putting through value education, because the parent is the best educator for that. Flexible courses, because with access of content at any point of time from anywhere. Admin loads to diminish. This is something that would drastically, make teachers easy, comfortable to actually focus on the more important things in life. And how would knowledge creation change with these kind of connections that we make and collaboration that we have? Because there's just one new responsibility that came on the shoulders of all the educationists globally. You're now not just responsible to decipher education, you now need to create the knowledge bank that the world would look for the future generations to create more and more innovation. Thank you so much, Claudia. Let's now, before we go on to the next guest and I ask them to speak, we need to understand that this very platform that where we are all, it's a platform which is meant for all the education practitioners who are, fighting on daily, every day, having somewhere around 5 to 6 hours of virtual classes, facing those digital pranks from their students. So just to give an understanding of the kind of audience that we have here. Let's now listen to Mr. Vipul Reddy, Head of School Enablement, Khan Academy, India. Vipulji, over to you. You can unmute your audio.
First of all, thank you so much for having me over here, and really appreciate your, giving us this platform to talk. It's an honor to be in front of all of you over here that I'm speaking to. I'll actually just be brief about the experience that Khan Academy has. So for those of you that may not have heard about Khan Academy, basically what it is it's a content website that is used fairly vast, by a very vast sort of audience of learners around the world. So we are talking about, it used to be about 6 crore learners worldwide. It's kind of gone up lately to about, in the vicinity of around 9 crores. We have an audience in about 190 countries. We've got, using up to 40 plus languages to learn. In India, when we basically came in over here, we basically found that we already had a large audience that was already using Khan Academy with, we had no marketing spend. We basically just set up a shop over here and found that we already had like a fairly large following, in this country. Over the last little bit, we've been looking at schools that are using Khan Academy on a system-wide scale. So, these are schools that are using Khan Academy in a classroom type of an environment. More often than not, to usually consolidate something that has been taught by a teacher. What we found is that a couple of things. One, when there's a teacher in the picture versus when there isn't a teacher in the picture, there's a sea of difference in the results that you're likely to see. And so we obviously see that, teachers, when they use Khan Academy in tandem with other resources potentially, and use it with some sort of a very predictable cadence, you're way more likely to see, significantly better impact than if you didn't have a teacher, if basically children were using it on their own accord. Having said that, there's a couple of things I'd just like to point out in this environment that we are finding in Indian schools. And again, most of the schools we work with are really large public school systems at the national level, at state levels. So first and foremost is, the schools that have differentiated themselves and are really doing well in this environment in terms of using the resources that are available from resource providers like us. 3 major differentiating factors that we are seeing. One, the schools that invested in training their teachers. The schools that basically took the time and the effort and had the foresight to actually get, system-wide training for all of their teachers, not just on the technology, not just on how to use a tool, but to use it well in the context of the learning problem that they're trying to solve. That is something that isn't as prevalent as I would have hoped for it to be. It is definitely something that more and more schools are doing, but it hasn't really been that prevalent in the past. Those that had the foresight to do that are, head and shoulders ahead of the rest in terms of really, hitting the ground running and being able to sort of very flawlessly execute in this environment. Second thing that we've seen is, and more often than not, all of the three characteristic features we're finding are in usually the same set of schools. The second characteristic feature that we're finding is schools that use data as opposed to sort of subjective, how should I put it, subjective sort of opinions while determining how they should teach, what they should teach, when they should teach. So when you've had schools that did that and have data as part of their DNA, and by that I mean when a teacher is actually looking at hard data in detail to figure out who are the children that need her attention, what is it that they need her attention on, and what can she do to basically help them to move further along. Those are the schools that really were able to start to use these tech tools very seamlessly. In fact, they found that it was like a force multiplier for them. So while data wasn't something that was introduced because of tech, when tech showed up, that entire data gene sort of seemed to sort of really bloom and blossom and really find its footing. Last but not the least, schools that really used parents as partners, as opposed to just a consumer of their service. Again, where when you're in this type of situation where you have one teacher trying to be a teacher to 35, 40 kids, you basically sit in a classroom. You all of you who are working in schools right now know what that's like. You don't know what's happening at the other end. You can see a child's head on the camera. More often than not, you may not even see that if the camera is off. And you really don't know, what's happening at the other end. In that situation, actually having a parent on site who is a strong partner of yours in that child's learning is really an irreplaceable sort of asset for any teacher anywhere. And schools that have actually invested in that, again, long before this situation came along, were the ones that are really reaping outsized benefits. So again, to quickly recap, schools that invested in training their teachers, schools that invested in using building up a data DNA, and schools that used their parent base as partners in fulfilling their mission to educate. A couple of enabling factors that these schools would usually have is one, obviously, they had infrastructure. In the school, obviously, they invested in infrastructure. And they have also sort of like when they have parents as partners, it may not mean that, every child has to have a device that's available to them. But, parents then start to proactively think about how can I make this possible? I may not have a device. There may be someone in my neighborhood, in my village, in my community that might be able to sort of, lend a device, give access to a child for a certain period of time. These aren't problems that schools will ever be able to solve on their own. But when you actually add those parents in your environment as your partners, those are schools that really were able to get a lot further along than those that didn't. Last but not the least, obviously when you have all of these things, technology, data, and a really well-informed teacher, you obviously need to have school operations that support them. And again, that basically means that, how you actually do, how do you basically do homeworks? Like how do you assign homework? How do you basically make sure that homework got done? How do you make sure that, that there's some sort of an assessment rubric that makes sense in this type of an ecosystem? Those is, again, these are things that usually come hand in hand with all of the above things that I've talked about. Essentially, there's almost like 100% correlation between the schools that did one of these and schools that did the rest of these, and so those are the schools that really did well. If you aren't one of them, I think, you might, it's never too late. I think you would still want to think about, how you could get into the act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vipul. And one, you quoted some very nice facts that first, there are 9 crore learners on your platform, and Khan Academy had a following in India before actually it arrived in India. And the schools that actually invested in teacher training, not just for technology, but for solving the real learning challenges that they were facing and every day. And the learning difference that happens when there is a teacher and when there's just technology and resource there. So there's a big, vast difference that happens. Schools who are using data and not subjective opinions on decision making, this is something very important, that whether data science, machine learning, and all these things, we need school leaders who understand all this and who are able to make a decision based on all this. And technology bloomed the data stream, that's for sure, because now we know that yes, we can create data at every point, and now we should know how to utilize that best for better decision making. And parents as partners, the way it actually panned out in India was the school became transparent, because in each class there was a parent everywhere, and every single statement by a teacher was being scrutinized. And the school never had a CRM department. We never had something called a customer relationship management, but now we are supposed to do that. And because that's the highest priority task at the moment that most of the schools are facing. And the typical class size has quadrupled, because every student has at least 3 more people sitting on that same call in that same video frame who are trying to judge what the school is doing. So parents as partners is the new approach, and it should actually come into play really quickly, which is not happening very smoothly in India as of now. But yes, I think this is something where schools should actually start investing on, because that's where they'll buy their own piece, and that's when they can think on the better things in life to do it. Collective device usage. This is something that has very effectively happened all across India, because here we did not each have a device of our own. And the BYOD model would come here in a little bit more time, that bring your own device. We'll have our own devices, but it'll take some more time. And assessment and homework. Assessment is something which has been, hugely discussed across platforms as of now, because we need to rethink on what we are trying to assess and the objective of the assessment and why we are doing it. Because just mundane, trying to understand his memory cramming power or whatever we say, this has to evolve. And one thing that we should all remember, that while we are talking about all this, we're talking about what's happening, the way it's all innovating. We should remember that rural India, here we were trying to create an education ecosystem. We were still in the trying phase, and the epicenter of that complete effort was a midday meal, which cannot be delivered virtually, which is a big challenge that we're facing right now, that we know that there's a part of the world that's online, that's studying, that's in the virtual classroom, but still there's a very, very big part which is absolutely untouched by technology or even an internet. So, but thank you so much, Vipulji. Let's now listen from somebody who can give us a bird's eye view on the learning outcomes and the way India as a nation, as parents, stresses on coaching or the extra edge that they add to education. Let's now listen to Mr. Ankur Jain, who's the director, FITJI, FIITJEE Tech Ventures for Education, and managing trustee, FITJI Global School, Delhi. Ankurji, over to you. Namaste and a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daksh, and my sincere gratitude to all the people, those who are available on this platform today. And when we talk about future school, the first thing which comes to my mind is about future. What do we talk about future? Probably, Jesus Christ was one divide, where the word divided into pre-Christ era and the post-Christ era. Then probably the next big move was the World War. People started saying that the post-World War and pre-World War. And probably it is the third divide, which we are seeing in last couple of years. Is called, pre-COVID and post-COVID, something of that. Yeah, technology, we very much, are familiar with the Khan Academy, Mr. Salman Khan doing the great work for a long time. Technology, when I think of technology, one sentence comes to my mind is that friction force is a necessary evil. We all know that, friction force is bad. It takes away a lot of, energy when you try to move something. But simultaneously, you just can't walk on the road without friction. Your cars, your vehicles just can't move on any road if the friction is absent. So now at the moment, suddenly technology has become too much into focus, and the entire focus has moved onto technology. And this is true. But simultaneously, when the technology comes, we also see that, how do we use technology, and how do we stop our children from misusing it or abusing it. So in addition to use of technology, there are important concerns about misuse and abuse of technology. Big companies, be it Khan Academy, be it Byju's, be it Google, Microsoft, they all have invested very heavily, and they're working in the field of education. So education and technology are into priority, but somewhere we see that some angles are being missed at. Now when it comes to technology, there are some important aspects about learning from reading, learning from listening, learning from or practicing at home. There are technologies going into animations, augmented realities, virtual realities. There are technologies coming up in the field of remote education, delivering your teaching through a distance. So technology is something which we are really working upon. But then I would like to draw your attention towards the curriculum. Now, at the moment in India, something called new education policy is announced, and everybody is dissecting it. That's really wonderful. But again, if I go into past and then compare with future, in past, let's say 1,000 years back or 1,500 years back, what was education? I don't know much. I am not a history teacher. I'm a physics teacher, actually. I use the friction, quote. But what I understand is 1,000 years back, mostly it was either a teaching related to dharmas. Hindu, scholars used to learn about Vedas, Upanishads. Christians were reading about Bibles. Muslims were reading about Quran, etc. It was primarily a dharma-oriented, education system. Somewhere at the same time, martial arts, learning, fighting, etc., used to be, education. There was a time where history, culture, dancing, learning, culture, etc., all this used to be, the priorities of teaching or priorities of education. But is somebody thinking about what would be the priority of education in future? What you're talking about, the future school? Are we going to teach dharma? Are we going to teach martial arts? Are we going to teach just the history and culture? Okay, before we go into future, what is present? What actually, in school, I'm not criticizing it, but primarily if we refer to our curriculum is science, mathematics, and language based. We study languages, we study science, we study mathematics, and that's what the education is. But we all need to think about that in future when it comes to education. What would be the need from curriculum? Would the skill development not be a bigger requirement than just the learning? The wisdom development. So from learning to skill development and wisdom, I feel like in terms of curriculum has to be understood. Somewhere Mr. Daksh talked about that technology, we are addressing the problem of communication. But are we addressing the problem of communication? We are teaching our children a good amount of English, good amount of Tamil, Hindi, whatever language. But a person with a vast knowledge about the language, do we say that the person is able to communicate? So in future, ability to communicate would be something very important and need to be worked out. The teachers of future school have to be different. They have to be more responsible. They have to have different abilities to be able to make a difference. In future, schools need to also think about infrastructure. But I would also touch upon when it comes to future school. I know you probably wanted to listen from me from the coaching perspective, and what is it coaching industry is thinking about, and what is coaching industries. Maybe I'll come to that point as well if I have 2 extra minutes to speak. But because this is a forum, all of you are working towards future education, I would say that there are certain hidden points which probably everybody has forgotten, and I would like to draw your attention towards it. Fitness and healthcare. Generally, fitness and healthcare in today's world or past world was not linked to school and education. But in future, the healthcare, especially from the current pandemic situation, the healthcare of the children, the fitness of the children will become really important. New diseases like obesity or these kind of things are coming up. The children need to understand the importance of the healthcare. And the foremost, before I start speaking on the last point would be education. We all are talking about technology, we're talking about science, we're talking about mathematics, we're talking about skill development. But what about life? We all know that we have got a life, maybe for 60 years, for 70 years, for 80 years. But do we really educate our children that, what is the goal of this life? Is the goal of this life is to just keep running? In the childhood, keep waiting to be young. In the young, keep waiting to be, more mature in terms of making a career. In career, keep waiting that, from one chair to another chair, another chair to another chair. So is life about just running, or life about being happy or achieving something? So when it comes to future education, to all educationists, present over here, I would, like to make an appeal that consider all these points while developing your future schools. Now, if you're looking towards me from the coaching perspective, let's do understand, why do we need coaching at all? Why coaching? Why actually the need of coaching came? I am a graduate from IIT Delhi, and IIT is supposed to be the most prestigious career in India, and 15 lakh students every year aspire for some 8,000 to 10,000 odd seats. So out of 15 lakh, 14 lakh 90,000 students fail. So that's the kind of a situation. But then why a coaching is required? So if I recollect my time, in a school, the teacher wasn't able to prepare us for such kind of a competitive examinations or to prepare for competitive. So when it comes to education, in future, yes, Fiji is investing into it, building into, investing into school infrastructure, opening schools starting from Tamil Nadu. In Andhra, schools directly operate. But future means no coaching. There shouldn't be a coaching. And if you ask me, what is coaching's perspective? The coaching's perspective is no coaching. Kill coaching, let the school do their job properly. And if the school do their job properly, teach children well, there's no need. I'm happy. One of you hire me as a teacher, I'm happy working in a school. Why, make separate coaching center? Let's make better schools and deliver good education to children in the school itself. So I hope, I try to cover, whatever my feelings were. Yes, if you have any questions, I feel privileged if you can ask me any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ankurji. To summarize what you said, the time division by Christ, then the world war, and finally COVID. Friction force is a necessary evil. That's where we as humans learn. That's when we as a society learn. When we face an existential crisis, we become receptive. We become empathizing, and we start to listen, experiment. How do we use tech and misuse and stop misuse and abuse of it? Just to quote on this very platform, one of the principals of a leading school of India from Bombay said this statement that we had to stop virtual classes just after starting them, after 7 days of doing that, because kids were so tech savvy that they were doing digital pranks that we were not able to handle in that very classroom. So this is a different aspect of how teaching is going on right now. Historical teaching, from martial arts to, Vedas to Dharma, what are we actually going to teach, and how is the objective of teaching going to change in the time? Is it going to be skill, or what would be the focus of teaching in the coming times? Curriculum has to be redesigned, and I think the national education policy, or the new education policy that has come in, it will, what most of the people say, it will be helpful in a lot of ways, because it has made a lot of people free of initial clutches that education had. Because since education is not a business, I should not use this word, but if we take a look at it from a bird's eye view, it's the most regulated business in India, where you even are regulated at the revenue end, and at the expenditure and at the licensing end. So the new education policy has actually eased out that a bit. And fitness, healthcare, and future means no coaching from the coaching perspective. And how would that happen with schools coming out from a coaching giant himself? Let's see what the future holds for coaching and schools. Thank you so much, Ankurji. Let's listen to the next guest for today. Mr. Raj Grover, who is a pioneer in the Indian school education system, is now an investor in a lot of education technology and education-based businesses. How does he perceive the financial model, the investing model, the equity model of schools, school education, and the technology companies impacting that model? How would it evolve, and what would be the factors that we should be looking at and trying to be cautious about? Over to Raji. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you, Daksh, and congratulations to the team for this very special 75th or 77th session of Global Webinar for School Leaders. I must admit, I'm finding it much more enriching and enlightening than what I anticipated. And Daksh, I really like the way you think and you present your entire thoughts and the structure, the way it is formatted. More than that, I'm liking the quality of speakers. We have Claudia from Oxford. We have people from Khan Academy and the world's largest coaching institute and vice chancellors of universities. It's really amazing to have such honored and prestigious speakers on this dais and forum. Listening to the conversation, I'm going to slightly shift gears over here and bring in a perspective. I basically have been a CEO in many corporates and built businesses in the consumer, retail, and the other sides, and then eventually made a choice to become an entrepreneur and started the first concept of what we today call as international schools and brought in best practices into India as early as early 2000, and then replicated the same for the low-cost schools, and also have been led many initiatives in the edtech space and also education sector globally. So therefore, I bring in a slightly different perspective and a dimension to the entire conversation happening over here. And that in turn will relate to, the investor mindset on one side and the future of schools on the other side. And somewhere where Daksh also initially started off saying that, what's the role of the educators? And I think Claudia and, others and Ankush and others mentioned, purely what is the role of educators in this entire context. So I think we'll all understand what is the roadmap in terms of the future of schools. So I think it's cliche as of now to talk about it because it's going on since, a decade or so, this 21st century skills and XYZ. So my focus is primarily going to be, let's understand the why. Why do we need this change in the, learning and education format? And I may be slightly digressing over here and bring in, something which may sound a little bit too futuristic, but mind you, the way I see it is, I written this note 2 years ago, and I'm pulling out extracts from that. Is how is the future evolving? If we really want to understand how future of schools and future of learning and education needs to be, we need to understand first two things. A is which is the audience that we're talking about. We're talking about the Generation Z, and Generation Z primarily is the ones which were born 1997 onwards. That's one. Two is we've got to evaluate the future and its impact on the lives, livelihood, and the lifestyle of this generation. So I would primarily list down over here 5 major shifts the way I see happening in the real world going forward. One is primarily bots. Bots as the new species. By bots, I mean artificial intelligence and automation. AI and automation primarily are emulating humans and are going to invade and possess our lives and livelihoods in 3 very big areas. One is the IoT, which is the Internet of Things that we all know of. Everything is connected today in the real world. Second is a lot of the medium to low-end jobs are already getting replaced through what we call as the digital workforce. This digital workforce is not, the manufacturing robot workforce that we're talking about. We are talking about desk job being replaced by bots and artificial intelligence and automation, which primarily means possibly in the near future, there may be very little to, no jobs for the mid and lower levels in the work environment. And it doesn't restrict itself to that. It primarily even, is beginning to impact the qualified workforce. The qualified workforce that will get impacted is, in the area of surgeons, doctors, paralegal, audit, and whatnot, chefs, you name it. I recently saw even creative art being, emulated by artificial intelligence. So primarily bots is the new species and going to bring about immense change going forward. Second, the way I see it is we built up a new planet on this earth. And this planet actually, encircles the entire Earth itself, what I call as the cloud. Cloud is the new planet. Primarily, that's the world where, everything resides, all thoughts reside, all data reside, all information reside. And that's where we go and visit every day today when we want to do government transactions and work, we want to do office work, we want to do personal, interactions or whatnot. And what this means primarily is the person-to-person interactions and engagements are getting replaced with person-to-device. Now, this brings in a whole new dimension in the way we engage, the way we communicate, express, talk, convey through our thoughts and ideas, and brings in a very different twist out of it. Third thing, which I see as a major impact and a major shift in terms of the future of lives and livelihoods, is redundancy. Redundancy in terms of conventional models of businesses and conventional practices. Now, disruption-led destruction is what I see in terms of businesses and industry. To give a little bit more background to this, the biggest sector being possibly to be impacted is the small and medium enterprises. And 60 to 70% of the workforce primarily have their lives and livelihoods dependent on this specific sector globally. Now imagine the impact of this, in terms of redundancy of intermediaries by themselves. And third, and the most important in this entire context, the disruptors themselves being disrupted. A simple example for that is, email started with Hotmail. Hotmail got disrupted by AOL. AOL got disrupted by Yahoo. Yahoo got disrupted by Gmail. And this all happened within the span of 15 years. So, we are talking about some, major redundancy in progress over here. The fourth part, as a passing comment I would make, is integration of functions. Going forward, there are possibly going to be no silos in terms of science, finance, commerce, design, arts, service, whatever you call it. They're all going to be integrated as one seamless experience end to end, because that's what the consumer wants in the end. So primarily what it means is the collapse of the matrix system of management. So it's straight away customer to the leader, and there are no middle managers in terms of, area managers and supervisors and regional managers and HODs and all those kind of things. It's all going to be, evaporate in thin air very soon. And the last and the fifth point in terms of major shift is the rate and the pace of change that we're talking about. We have all been brought up in the world where we believe that 1 becomes 2 and 2 becomes 4 and 4 becomes 6. The new world, both in terms of building and in terms of destruction, 1 becomes a million and million becomes a billion. Similarly, it works the reverse. Billion becomes a million and million becomes a zero overnight. Yeah. So the rate and pace of change happening in the world is which has already started and going forward is going to just accelerate more so given our recent experience in the last 3-4 months with the COVID and its impact. All this is the 5 major shifts I see. And this in turn brings in terms of, a better clarity in terms of why things need to change, how they need to change, and what is it that we need to do. So the implications of all these, the way I see on the Generation Z, is in terms of employment and continuity of employment seems to be a serious challenge. Redundancy of skills. Well, cats have 9 lives. I don't know how many lives this generation will have in terms of skills that they will have to learn. Most important, I see, which is rarely mentioned, is inconsistency on income, and many opportunities of wealth erosion and wealth destruction. I mean, not opportunities of erosion, but many opportunities of wealth, creation on one side, at the same time, erosion and destruction. The how and what in terms of language doesn't matter anymore. Our schools are all focused on the how and what. I would say it's all about, since everything is going to be, person to device, and we are going to interact through technology, how do you express your thoughts? How do you articulate? How do you present your ideas, thoughts? How do you ask the right question? For example, in Google, if you want to search something, Google doesn't try to make it in terms of what you could be thinking and what you are actually asking. You have to specifically use the word and say exactly what you mean, and only then Google can give you the right answers. Similar is going to be going forward, is going to be, so the communication design in terms of the way school understand has to change drastically. So the basic responsibility of educators, the way I see happening and the changing going forward, apart from subject knowledge and expertise, which could just become the basic qualifier. What I see is for success in life, the students where, Claudia and others and, Ankur also mentioned and Vipul mentioned, and Claudia made a very good brief over there about higher order thinking. If we want to compete with bots, that's the space where we'll have to be in. And that's the space we'll have to prepare our younger generation for. Higher order thinking is going to be the name of the game for you to survive. Point one. Point two is, since everything is going to be technology and technology led, technology works on logic. So if you need to understand technology, if you need to engage with technology, schools need to take up the onus and responsibility on ensuring students understand logical thinking and reasoning, and a stepwise process-based reasoning you're talking about over here. Third most important thing what I see in terms of success, what we need to build on is entrepreneurship. Going forward, and entrepreneurship not in terms of because we want everyone to become entrepreneurs. I am taking entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship, basically trains you on various skills, which would become the need of the future for every child going forward. Entrepreneurship in terms of as risk takers, breaking the mold, overcoming obstacles, being survivors, expanding the horizon, working within constraints and whatnot. Fourth point when it comes to success, the way I see it is financial literacy becomes extremely important. Since there's going to be inconsistency on incomes and there's going to be wealth destruction at different points of time, maybe 3-4 times in your lifespan, it's very important. The generation of today understands the prudence and the logical thinking on financial literacy and how do they protect themselves or start planning and preparing for them and understand the deeper aspects of it. And the last part on this area is innovation. That's in terms of softer skills and other areas. In terms of attitudinal shift that we need going forward, I would say primarily is the tolerance and adaptability to chaos and uncertainty. But that's a given. Whatever you see now is just the beginning. The rate of change, as I mentioned, is going to be exponential and no longer linear. Reinventing, rediscovering yourself as lifelong learners. We all understand this, famous term of learn, unlearn, and relearn. And in addition to all this, failure as a given. Not to see failures as threat, not to see failure as defeat, but to see them as learnings, and we take them as challenges and move on from that. More than that, somewhere I think Ankur mentioned about it, and I would take a leaf from there, is the emotional well-being. All this being on the device primarily means we are going to become loners. Depression is going to be the biggest disease going forward. And, stress is going to further compound the entire thing. So should we look at body, mind, soul and its interaction and relativity, and connecting the generation with their body, mind and soul as a perspective. How about looking at happiness as a program? Oxford today runs a program on happiness, which has a 3-year waiting period. How about, bringing it down to school level? Because that's going to be a biggest, one of the other further challenges going forward. So the way I see it is, the future is very, very different. Education has to play a phenomenal role in terms of connecting and engaging with the future the way we see and evolve. I think the best phase of education transformation that happened was in the industrial era. In the industrial era, the education format globally changed from thinking and innovating and entrepreneurship. We made everyone, go through a schooling process where they were trained to just do as being told. Yeah, America went a different way. That's the reason why it took leadership in the global framework. All British run colonies took a different approach. That's the reason why everywhere where the British colonies rule, we have more doers than thinkers in this entire context. So the entire process is going to change. And if we need to bring about the change, now is the time. So how do I connect all this back to what's the best way for practitioners to look at this entire change and connect with that? So obviously, knowledge is no longer the key role, and teaching is no longer the key role. Life is going to be the teacher. The real experiences are going to be the best teacher. The role for educators and teachers primarily, as on date, the way I see it is to be the torchbearers, as guides, as mentors, as facilitators, help shape their personality, attitude, and well-being to face the world of tomorrow. The way I see it is, educators understand the why, they'll be able to relate to the what. And if you understand the why and the what, the how will come as a natural part of the entire process. Now, the best way for all this to go forward and make it work is, the way I see it is, technology becomes the biggest enabler in this. Going forward, and technology, not the way educational sector is seeing it today. I think technology needs to take a quantum leap, and tech enablement in terms of schooling needs to take a quantum leap. The format that we understand today, the practices that we are following today, just being digital or online is not technology. Technology is a whole different perspective and a whole different, game changer in which education needs to emulate and relate to. So as an investor, if I wear the hat of an investor, we are looking out for people who are thinking on these lines. We are looking out for technology and solutions which are aligning to this need of the future. And the best way of learning for tomorrow is not by reading. It's not by it's not by trying to get conceptual clarity. It's more through practice. And technology can be a biggest enabler in practicing all the skills that we mentioned about, because practice is the best way of learning. So long and short, I would say, if you understand the why, you know the what, and the how will come to you naturally. And if you can imbibe all these things, I think we can all do a big difference to the future of schooling and education and learning the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajji. To summarize, as you summarized yourself, but you must know the why and what, and the how will automatically follow in. And desk jobs getting replaced. Generation Z has a very different kind of a receptive attitude. They do not accept things very easily. They have that questioning attitude. They already have a logic-driven understanding of things. And one more very important thing that one of the behavioral scientists shared on this very platform, that a student who's looking on a screen like this has an attention, and trying to learn from it through a virtual classroom, has an attention span of only 8 seconds. On every 9th second, he has started daydreaming. So we need to think on this very important aspect, that how are we going to create education content which is super duper engaging, because you need to entertain them with education. And that's where we as teachers, because it's very simple. When you look at a screen, you want a celebrity to be on it. And when you see a teacher on it, you try to compare both. And that's where the disconnect happens. And that's what's happening through virtual classes at the moment. But we need to now delve more deeper into it to build a better understanding on how would technology come in, and how would we find our address on the new earth of the cloud. That do we have an address on the cloud, or we don't have that? Let's find that out. And how would bots interfere into our life? Thank you so much, Raj sir, for adding that perspective. Now, the next guest who I'm going to invite is going to add the higher education twist to the whole discussion, that how would that change, and how do they perceive that schools or school education or the content of school education should evolve to get much better aligned to specializing in whatever you want to do, because I think that would be the only role higher education will be playing from now on. And before I invite him, a very happy birthday, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time on your birthday. A very warm welcome to Dr. Pankaj Gupta, President, IIHMR University from Jaipur. Very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible, Bajji?
Yeah.
Am I audible? Okay. So, thank you very much for inviting me. And after listening to all great speakers, I think there is not much to be said, but I would like to bring one perspective. We have been talking about, what to do and why to do, and then as Raj was sharing, that how will follow. And also there is always a time that, the students have been, you need to create excitement. Their attention span is only 8 seconds and so on. Then, we keep thinking about the different ways how to do that. But let me tell you, only the doing will not happen. If we focus on, doing and creating some new ideas or new tricks, or even making the learning more engaging, that may help to an extent. But what is really driving the faculty and what is really driving the students, that has to be really understood. as I have so many students coming to my university for doing a postgraduate study in healthcare, hospital administration, rural management, or even in pharmaceutical management, sometimes I find that the students are not very clear that if they are into it, or if, after doing this degree, what they wish to do. And I see that many times they are also being driven by that what, they have an opinion about that this can give a good job, or maybe somebody in the family or some friend has said so. So the basic possibility that what kind of seed of possibility you are and how you have to nurture that. We are not talking about that. Like if you talk about the ancient Gurukula model, everybody was taught in an individual manner. Like Arjuna was taught that how to be good with, bow and arrow. The beam was taught in a different way. So we also need to understand that how to find out what is a driving factor, what is the strength of the students, and then to create the learning model according to that. So, and many times also I think Ankur was sharing that there is always a feeling of missing out something, or something is not good enough, and those kind of roles are there. So we need to work on the being of these people, and also we have to understand that, what is really driving them. Many times they are driven by the parents, sometimes by teachers, sometimes by the society, and very hardly driven by themselves. And one simile I have been always saying that if you are a coconut seed, you better go to Kerala or Goa. And if you are an apple seed, it is better, you'll be doing much better if you are in a soil like Kashmir or Himachal. But how many of us are really very much interested in knowing? We see, okay, I've got 3,000 students in my school. And then it also becomes like somebody was sharing education is, not a business, but I will, differ on that. Sometimes we are not really willing to admit, but even if it is business, we need to deliver the value to the student, to the parents, and to the society. They all are our very important stakeholders. So as we are moving, in the post-corona world or in the co-corona world, we feel that there is a lot of focus to be transforming on the being part of the students and also the being of the teachers. We know very long back that you can bring a horse to the water, but you cannot force him to drink the water. So you need to create a system. Therefore, that my student is going to be distracted. So what I have to do? We have to create innovative learning models, games, simulations, role play. And also now we have the technology by which we can know that how much is the participation level. And also we know that these days it is very much possible that, the student can review the classes. The class participation marks can be captured. Earlier, the guest lecture were very less in the schools, but now it is very much possible by the online mode. And even a lot of experiential work is very much possible. And also creating an individual development plan for each and every student, and also effective monitoring of that is very much possible in the e-mode. Because future is not coming just like this. Future is created by the mindful actions in now. What you are doing in now, it is creating the future on its own. If you feel there is a dearth of thing, there is a problem, I don't know what will happen. So I am sending a lot of insecurity signal to my students, to my children, and so on. So first of all, we have to tell them, it is, this too shall pass. There is nothing to worry. You need to only focus on what is in your hand right now, right here. And all the time we have been telling, if you get 99% in class 12, then you will be a great person, then you will get into Shriram College or you'll get into IIT Delhi, then only your life is made. I totally disagree with that. We need to really love our children the way they are. We need to tell, even if you're getting less percentage, you are totally okay with me. I love you the way you are. So that kind of signaling has to very much come from the parents, and that you will see that your child will totally surprise you by the kind of work he or she will deliver. And also in the online mode, we see that two things, one is avidya, another is avidya. What I will say that a lot of things, including big data and other things, and all these things you can teach clearly either by a recorded version or even by a teacher taught model in an online model. But still you will need teachers, for interaction, like learning life skills, career goals, life goals. You will be definitely needing the teachers. But who are the teachers? Again, we need to be very clear that the teachers also have to go through a total transformation. If the teacher who is really loving the job and also loving the very fact that he's being given the greatest gift, our children are we are so much attached to them. And when you give it to any teacher, oh, you please take care of my son or my daughter. I'm giving my highest, the biggest thing to you. And what are you doing? Oh my God, I am just a normal teacher. Oh, what to do? I am get paid very less. It is not at all which teacher should aim for. What we say is Swantaya Sukhaya. My work is my happiness. And I always believe that we have a friend from Khan Academy. How Khan Academy got created? Only by the love of a person. Let me create better things. In the same way, we need self-ignited teachers who are loving their job. And even at this time, there is no dearth of any money. You can make whatever money you want, because now the whole world is your market. So I'd like to say that self-awareness, inner journey, and also knowing what is the swabhav and what is the swadharma, based on the lot of discussion with the people, and also doing a lot of discussion with the parents also, that do not force your ideas into your child. Your children are not yours. They may come through you, but you do not hold any right over them. So therefore, sometimes we feel very happy, oh, my son has got 99%. Oh, your son has got it. You have not got it. So lot of education is needed to the parents, first of all, and then creating the right kind of models and right kind of goals, and loving the children the way they are and the way they are not. And that will create a great possibilities in our life. And not only the technical knowledge, but also the Gan, Gyan and Dhyan. There's some sort of music, some sort of meditation. And also both Vidya and Avidya, both are very much needed. And as my friend Raj was sharing, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, all these things are very, very important. So I'd like to say this. And also when we talk about teachers are also of different types. Some who are very good in teaching, let them teach. Some are research-oriented teachers, let them do the research. And also in running the school again, we see that there are not very good kind of training is available. Because when you're running a school, you also need to know and run it like a business. Providing good, return on capital, making sure the satisfaction of the students, the stakeholders, board, good rankings. That's the way, you have to do it. There is no way that you can say, oh, my job is only to teach and so on. So a new cadre is to be developed. And the cadre, which is a passionate teacher, there are some institution builders and there are some good researchers. I think the new education policy is taking some step on that. And since I come from a health university, the health is, not only the physical health, but the mental health, emotional health, and now the fourth dimension is also added by WHO. There is a spiritual health and the emotional well-being. So all have to taken into account, and therefore from a seed to the possibility level and change of the being, not only just the doing and having, but transforming the being, and that will take care of the right doing, and right doing will give you the right having. And therefore we can go from not the money, but the meaning, and from success to significance. So these are my some thoughts, and I believe future will be created by all of us by living fully in now and living totally and mindfully. So I'm just sharing one finding of the Harvard School of Public Health, the recent thing. They said that people are hardly living in now 18%. That means that where is 82% time your energy is going? It is going either in the regret of the past or anxieties about the future. So if we imagine, what kind of world we are going to create if you are living in now and living fully, mindfully now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pankaj Gupta, to share those amazing thoughts with us. And I think what we can take away very easily from it, that let's start living in the now, because 18% is not a big part of the day. And we should put more time towards that and stop thinking about the past or the future. Now let's listen from the next speaker. And I would request the next speaker to please keep it a little concise so that we can take questions, because there are already a big pile of questions that I have to put through. I invite Professor Ujjwal Kumar Chaudhary, who's the Pro Vice Chancellor of Adamas University, Kolkata. He's a person who has a good knowledge of the field of media practice and media studies as well. He has been instrumental in establishing India's one of the most successful media institutes, the Symbiosis Institute of Mass Communication. Over to Ujjwalji. Namaste and a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Since I'm the last speaker, it seems that I've already heard 3 more speakers. I will join late from another program. So there have been already very good points, spiritual aspects by Dr. Pankaj Gupta. The argument that coaching is not needed if the education in school is so great by Rahulji, Ankurji. And the talk, a fabulous talk, I noted down certain points by Mr. Raj Grover ji, explaining how the new normal is turning many things redundant and how integration of functions are coming. Fabulous ideas. So I'd not get into repeating what has been already done and told. I understand that. So quickly 10 points in one line. 1, the new normal would bring forth a redefinition of the whole concept of teacher and student. So from teacher, we move to mentor. It seems like almost the same, but perceptionally and application wise, a big difference. A teacher teaches in the classroom. A mentor mentors within and beyond the classroom. A teacher runs with a structured syllabus. A mentor begins with a structured syllabus, goes into an organic syllabus. A teacher is fixated on the outcome in form of examination marks and grades and degrees. A mentor is focusing on the outcome in life. There are many more points that I can tell on that, but due to lack of time would not go. Similarly, the student concept has to be replaced with learner. Student learns in classroom, learner learns within and beyond the classroom. Students learn from teachers, learners learn from mentors, peers, self-experience, a digital medium, observation, and many things. Students learn for marks, grades, and degrees. Learners learn for application in life. And therefore, what he learns today can be discarded tomorrow as well. Learning to learn in future in a world where there is no lifetime career is an important aspect for a learner. So that's one point. Point number 2, we are for sure not going back to January 2020 ever again in education. So let every one of us, whether we are in primary school, even toddler school, even toddler schools are coming out with blended model concepts now. So we have come to stay with the reality that it will be a blended model of education going ahead. As and when there are crises, there can be quick, seamless movement to fully digital education as well. Just now, we have had a very incongruous, a very tough movement to and a very uneven movement to the online or digital learning. Unfortunately, 72% of the India's student population still are not on digital platform. Let's understand that it's only 28% which is there on the digital platform. Out of the 72%, out of that 72%, around 30% are on some form of digital through the WhatsApp and few things like that. But the others are completely out, which is roughly 50% of the total student population, completely out of the online learning. So the digital divide has to be bridged. Otherwise, the economic have-nots, which is turning into digital have-nots, because an economically divided society is a class divided society is bound to be divided digitally as well. And digital division is even more acute because along with class division, there is also a urban-rural dichotomy with respect to digital. Hinterland dichotomy where the digital access is not there much. And therefore, we have to come to realize this point, the government to corporations, to organizations of education, and to individuals like us. We have to come to realize that like roti, kapda, makan, shiksha or swast, there has to be a digital access as the sixth element along with the other five for a dignified life. And hence, blended learning has come to stay, and we must understand. And blended learning requires my third point, flipped classroom. Flipped classroom was a concept of B schools. Dr. Pankaj Gupta has been applying this. I have seen in Symbiosis when both of us were Symbiosis directors, he of management and me of media. But then this flipped classroom has come to stay even in schools now, even in lower classes as well. You have to tell to the students in advance of what you are going to teach, or you send the videos, send, if it is possible in some classes, PowerPoints, send some interesting case studies, send some links to study, the open source links to study. So therefore, there has to be blended learning as we go ahead. Like I really like the example of personal dictionary, that example that Daksh has been given earlier, or the example that I can. So innovations have to come in. That's my next point. Innovations have to come in. Like online, because the students are not well connected, a teacher, a principal asks the students to create a personal website. 5 new words every day and inform the words and their usage on the WhatsApp group of the batch. The whole batch learns so many new words and some words are common among them. Similarly, I have seen one school, I'm a pro vice chancellor of Adamas University. There is the Adamas World School and Adamas International School. I'm proud to tell 99.5% were received by Adamas International School. But I really don't know how students these days get 99.5%. How realistic is that evaluation? That's another question that I would like to also point out. But anyway, coming back, Adamas World School did one unique thing. The whole course of science was divided into 10 different models. And groups of students were asked to make models, individual models on that, like photosynthesis model and things like that, and take pictures of that and put up on the WhatsApp group. That was one unique thing. So we have to find out with innovations now going ahead. And fifth, social media as a learning platform. So far, social media was considered to be a fad. It was not taken seriously, neither by teachers nor by parents. But we have to understand each of these, due to lack of time, I am not going. Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. All of these can be turned into learning platforms in a way. And we have to move to LMS, learning management system, in every school, from toddler school to higher secondary. We have to understand that massive open online courses or MOOCs have to be brought in along with regular education. And we have to also understand every school needs to create customized proprietary learning resources. When you say take MOOCs, you take from, for example, free MOOCs, open MOOCs, you take from, let's say, Swayam or Diksha. In school, it's Diksha. Now, that's of CBSE. But if you are in higher education, you take it from Coursera, but that's paid for. Sometimes it's given free as a trial, but otherwise paid for. Then you create your own customized proprietary content, which is suitable for your audience. It can be in multiple languages. You can bring science in Hindi, science in Tamil, and you can bring in the individual teachers and their styles and gestures also is great. Gesticulations, and you create proprietary content. I'm not getting into time for lack of time getting into that. Sixth point, we have to understand the so-called project-based experiential learning of the past, which was only for higher education, and it's even truer now for our universities, has become also true for schools. You have to think of projects, a project given at the beginning of the year, and maybe by 6 months or 12 months, the project is ended by a group of workers, group of students. Thereby teamwork, leadership, and project-based learning happens. And the project is divided into small components to be done in every quarter. We have to think of experiential learning through experiencing something. I'm not again getting into examples. And this very good point mentioned by Raj Grover ji, and also in the new education policy. I have lot of limitations of the new education policy also to be told, but I will not take this platform to tell that. But one good point, arts, science, commerce division and distinction to be broken. The walls, the so-called iron curtains to be broken. The skill-based vocational education and so-called theoretical education. This training versus education conflict has to be ended. There has to be a seamless integration of training and education. Why can't I learn why of it, which is education, and how of it, which is training, together? That is the point that has to be brought forth. 7th point, new 3 forms of literacy has to be brought in school. Financial literacy mentioned by Raj Grover. Media literacy, as I will tell, how to understand what is good and bad cinema, what is right and wrong news, what is so-called fake news, because if news is fake, it cannot be news. And if it is news, then it cannot be fake. So false content. How to understand and get back into false content, busting false content, has to be brought at least at class 9 to 12 level. And legal literacy campaign, basics of law, every youngster. Now you are allowing an 18-year-old class 12 student to vote and elect the government, but you are not bringing the knowledge of the basic law of the country for the. How does a girl or a boy, now psychologically we teach the girls to understand good touch and bad touch, but do we teach them what is molestation by law? What is, for example, there are many other things that we can tell. How to interpret parents fight among themselves from a legal point of view. Along with psychological, emotional, there is a legal perspective as well. And therefore, legal literacy campaign, media literacy campaign, financial literacy campaign, these are important at school level itself. 8th point, school skill mission. There has been skills mission at the higher education level, at the higher level. It's very important that we bring in a firm, clear school skills mission, particularly when the government is now telling that skills have to be incorporated from class 6 onwards. 9th point, evaluation totally has to change. This exam-based, written exam-based, final exam-based evaluation is completely obsolete. It's 20th century idea. Think of examination not based on knowledge, because the mobile and the Google can give all the information. What is required is interpretation, is required is analysis. So open book exam, let students see books and let students see the portals and give an exam. But give the questions such that they are not Googleable. They cannot be Googled. And that requires the teachers to be intelligent. Asking definition, asking classification is the easiest form of examination. That sort of examination is the kamchori. Ask people that you cannot, they cannot just memorize. But unfortunately, we do the kamchori. All of us have been doing that. We take 10 years question paper and make the 11th year question paper. And people have understood, come to understand that. Students have, smart students have come to understand that. So therefore, evaluation has to be formative as you study and has to be summative. Has to be quiz, has to be analysis, has to be interpretation. Has to be application, applied questions. There can be a small element of course end exam, which is the summative exam. That can be an exam at the end. But projects also has to be. So written, unwritten, spoken, project, experiential, various forms of evaluation. And 100 marks cannot be one examination pattern. Now for a country of such a huge population, I understand it's a challenge. But then that is where we have to go really if we have to make our education higher. And in conclusion, who says education is not a business? It's an extremely serious business. It's an extremely serious business. You have to give returns to investment to the investors, whoever is the investor. You have to give higher salaries. Why should you pay the students, teachers the lowest salary in the salary bracket of the whole country? And you can only pay the teachers higher salary when you earn money. And if you have to earn money, there has to be multiple ways of earning money. Biggest one is no doubt admission fees. But there can be other ways. Think of corporate social responsibility. Think of individual social responsibility. Think of alumni relations. The IITs have done. Think of many other forms. Due to lack of time, again, I cannot go into that. Only funding of education should be a full-fledged 2-hour seminar. Lot more can be brought in. And not just that, as is very rightly said, most principals and most people who start education cannot read a balance sheet, unfortunately. Okay, principal may not be the education entrepreneur himself, but if the principal is also the owner of the organization, has to read balance sheet, has to learn to read balance sheet. When I'm saying it, I am not financially very strong. My understanding of financial terms and concepts, I am not strong. I am from media and communication. That I consider as my weakness. My ignorance cannot be your bliss. And therefore, education is a serious business. Give returns of investment, give returns of the time that the people give, students give returns of investment that the parents do. And therefore, it cannot be taken lightly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Urvaji, for that 10 power-pointer. And it was amazing that the way you encapsulated it and the kind of content that's needed and your opinion on what's going on right now. Thank you so much. I have got a lot of questions from the audience, but the time is coming to an end. But I would like to take 2 or 3 questions. The first one is actually for Claudia. Claudia, you come from an organization whose books and publications the generations before us and even us have read and learned through. And with the kind of change that's happening on around and the kind of pace of it, what is your opinion? And rather, we would be looking at at an answer which should be like something looking into a crystal ball. That where do you see the future of the printed book? What will happen to it? Will it be there? What will be the aspects that it will be there in, or how would it evolve in the coming, let's say, only next 5 years?
Thank you for the question. I don't think print is going anywhere anytime soon. It's not going to vanish. That's certainly not within our 5-year horizon or even 10-year horizon. There's a place for print, most definitely. Even in the most technologically advanced classrooms, print can do things that technology can't, and vice versa. So we very much see a blended model where print supports digital and vice versa. What could we do with a print book to complement the technology? Obviously, the two can speak to each other, and you can have what on a printed page is flat content come alive on a screen. And that's sort of where we're taking our basic premise from. We're also wanting technology to generate data. I think we also have intimated that data is quite important here. Print can't generate data the way technology can. So just keeping that in mind, but yeah, the value of print in terms of accessibility for schools that haven't got digital connection is absolutely paramount. We're not going to get rid of print.
So print, we're not going to get rid of print, that's going to stay, but we need to actually think on what all, because where this question comes from is very simple. As media industry is concerned, we are actually looking at print going forever and never coming back, because
that's interesting. Yeah, we're actually seeing educational providers that were just digital adding print to their mix. So they're actually realizing that they're missing an element there, that schools like the mixed economy. And we're doing it the reverse way. We're looking at adding the technology to the print. So I think you're going to see a mixed economy, actually.
A mixed
for very
economy.
Practical purposes, yeah.
Absolutely. So Vipul, we want your comment on this, that yes, there will be a blend of print and technology coming in, but the kind of content that you're creating, the kind of engagement that you're creating, is it in any way comparable to the engagement that print is creating? And how do you see a future of it? How is engagement going to change?
Yeah, so one of my arguments is that, if we're going to combine the two, we need to make sure that teachers are involved in the design of the combination of the mixed economy. And what we're seeing is with technology companies is, on the whole, they come in with a top-down approach. They don't get teachers involved with the design of the new pedagogy. And I think the combined aspect of the mixed economy of print and digital is going to require teachers who, of course, know how to implement in classrooms, to interact much more closely with publishers. I mean, we've always commissioned teachers to write print. We need to be much more focused on getting the teachers to design the new digital pedagogies that complement the print. So it's really, I'm just talking to the teachers in the audience here. Oxford and other good publishing houses will be inviting teachers in to co-design that mixed economy. And teachers will then be able to implement wherever they think is fit, more print, more digital, but they'll have the choice and they will have designed the systems with us.
What's your opinion on the same take, Vipul?
So I actually would second a lot of the things that Claudia is actually talking about over here. And that what we are seeing is that, see, in the past, you've always had print as sort of like the exclusive medium for instruction, right? Like that was literally all that there was. When I went to school, I had a textbook. That's pretty much all that my bag contained. That's what's changing is that print is now working in tandem with a lot of other media. But at the end of the day, it's, I think, indisputable at this point in time that print is what brings it all together. The hub at in the center of that entire wheel, with all those other spokes, is still very much, strongly print. Part of that is to do, obviously, with the fact that there's nothing that has sort of been as provenly efficacious. Also, the other part of it is that those that are actually, instructing have print as sort of their sort of comfort zone, if you will. And so, obviously, that you aren't going to basically see print going anywhere anytime soon. That I think I would definitely second her on. having said that, I think there's a couple of things that basically come into play. One, as Claudia rightly pointed out, one of the disadvantages of print is that you don't have the ability to get all of the data that you would have otherwise been able to through other means. I mean, some of the technology that we are seeing that's basically not yet sort of mass market, but is on the cusp of sort of, becoming a mass market phenomenon are, they're amazing at the kind of data that they can collect, the kind of sort of trends that they can extrapolate from that. I can tell whether you really know your stuff or not based on, if you basically have a multiple choice question coming to you, you pick choice A, then you pick choice B, or even if you just hover your mouse over an option, I know you're kind of not quite sure about your stuff, which is obviously the kind of thing that you wouldn't be able to tell about a learner from, a print medium. And so I think when these technologies work in tandem with each other, I think you have still a potential for getting the best of both worlds. You can still, like Khan Academy works in tandem, very much in tandem with print. It basically, you teach using print, but then you'll exercise, using a medium like Khan Academy. And so I would say, yes, I would second a lot of the things that Claudia said. That's basically the way it's going to be for the next little bit.
There's one question that actually comes out of this, and anybody can answer this, that print develops a very specific skill in every student. And technology till now has not found a way to do that. And that's visualization. Because when you read something, you have to create a picture out of it. And technology serves that picture to you. The stimulation is next level. But how would you then develop visualization in a child by using visuals? Because technology teaching is basically visuals.
Podcast. Radio is the theater of imagination. Audio is the theater of imagination. Podcast can do that. One. Second, there could be also visual. I mean, we can have an integrated communication where there is text, there is audio, and there is video, all coming integrated manner for the same story to be told. And there are examples, even comics are being used online. Obviously, you see it online, but there is illustration comics, there are pictures, there is audio, there is video, and there is text. And the same story is flowing. So a part of the story is text, it flows to a video and then flows to a cartoon or a comic strip and all that. This also is coming. It increases the visual capacity far more, allows the person to think the same story in words, in sound, and in graphics or a cartoon, and also as a video.
Thank you so much, Ujjwalji. I would have taken a lot more questions, but since the time is over, we need, within each of these talks, we try to end them with one thought, one idea, one forecast, one, what we can say, bhavishyavani in Hindi, or, telling the future. So please take 1 minute, and please take exactly 1 minute to give one idea or innovation that you think that people should carry away from this talk and remember you by that very thought.
I renounce my 1 minute. I have told my 10 points.
So anybody can start.
Sure, I could go. So I think there was a little article that I read about a very well-known venture capital firm in Silicon Valley, where one of the partners essentially, put out, essentially what he was saying is, like, in this environment, and this was a letter that, they wrote to their portfolio companies, the CEOs of their portfolio companies. And essentially what he said was that I don't have a crystal ball to really tell what's coming down the pipeline. But in my experience with all of these years of having seen, things sort of get thrown out of whack multiple times, 2001, 2008, there's been, it may not have been as severe, but we were out of control at that point too. Some of the things that worked, one of them was that, there's no downside to really going out of your comfort zone and trying something that in normal circumstances you would consider completely wild and irresponsible. In this environment, there is very little downside to actually trying something that you otherwise would never have tried. I think that's probably really, really good advice to a lot of the education ecosystem right now. These aren't normal times, and abnormal times call for, I guess, abnormal measures. And I think if you were going to try something crazy, now would be a good time to do it without really having to defend it too hard later on. So,
absolutely, thank you so much, Vipulji. So next, who would want to take the 1 minute?
Shall I quickly just give my 1 minute thoughts here? If we're rethinking schooling, which I think we are, then I think we also need to think about how we can better orchestrate and implement technology. And I think the advice here is to make sure that where you implement technology in schools, you do that in a consultative way. So the findings in research they've really shown that top down, as I've said just a minute ago, doesn't work, that you've got to bring the teachers with you in both the implementation and the design of the system, so that it's actually usable, and that the pedagogical alignment with the syllabuses actually speak to each other. That's really important, so the outcomes are better realized. I think a lot of this is untried, untested R&D, where you take a BAU system into new, and you're being brave about it, but bring the teachers with you, and take a kind of an R&D aspect as well. Look at what that does in terms of impact around learning outcomes. It's really exciting where we're going, but just we need to monitor the impact. Would be my message. Yeah.
Thank you, Claudia. Raji.
First of all, so I'll expand further on where I started from, and where Professor Ujjwal also made a very interesting points. According to me, the biggest thing ailing the entire education sector worldwide is the way we look at teachers. I think if we need any reforms globally in the sector, we first thing that we need to do is make teaching as a profession of choice. Yeah, and for it to be a profession of choice, it has to be financially rewarding. It has to be the first job that I prefer out of a college, and make it my preferred first option. And just giving this lip service of a guru branded ambassador, and I don't like when people say teaching is a noble profession. I feel it's like someone is instead of using XYZ unquoted words, is calling you as a noble profession. Yeah. And if we really want transformation, and the way we are seeing the entire sector changing, and the expectations that we have from the education sector, that cannot happen with the profile of teachers we have on board. I mean, I'm generalizing it. Of course, there are exceptions, and to like anything. We need people who understand conceptualization of ideas, who understand application, who can become mentors. And I love the way Professor Ujjwal defined various, articulated various roles of mentors. That's truly what is required going forward. I mean, teaching is not the job anymore. If your school is doing teaching, you are already out of business, because Google is doing a great job about it, and the students know how to go and explore all that. So if we want any reform, and I take a leaf from many who made a reference to the NEC, the National Education Policy that came through. My biggest regret is there is very little to nothing for the teachers in this context. And when we all ape Finland as the role model for education, I mean, in Finland, teaching is the first profession that everyone out of college, or rather I would say the most brilliant people in the nation, are in terms of nurturing and developing the generation of tomorrow. And the generation of tomorrow is going to lead the nation. The people who are going to guide them and mentor them have to be the brilliant minds, and have to be passionate about it, and have to be well rewarded. That's my summary.
Thank you so much, Raji. Ankurji, your concluding thoughts?
Well, I have multiple thoughts, but I'll take what Mr. Raj Grover has said. Let me add value to what Mr. Raj Grover really want to achieve, because if he want to achieve is achieved, then probably a lot is achieved. So I would say let all teachers educate their children in the school to become teachers. Like we normally teach our children that, okay, you want to be doctor, you want to be an engineer, you want to be a scientist, you want to be an astronaut, but nobody talks about you want to be a teacher. So let the children from the schooling itself be taught to be a teacher, and people take teaching profession as a choice. A lot would then change.
Thank you so much, Ankurji. Pankajji.
Dakshiji, I would like to say one thing that we started some initiative known as, from the grain revolution to brain revolution. Because, the farmer keep the best of the seed for the next crop, and where our best seed is going, we all know. So that is a very detailed discussion I had with Professor Shyam Sundar of the Yale University. So it requires maybe another webinar for that. But you see, any amount of money you give, any amount of outside reputation you give will not make a teacher to a guru. Because for that you need self-awareness and inner realization within you. And therefore that require, last HRD minister, I submitted a detailed proposal, teacher to guru program. And maybe I can discuss that with you. And there are some structured way in which this can be done. And not only the teacher, anybody can say that my child would like to become, being a lamp and igniting more lamps, because that whole possibility cannot be imposed to anyone. And the very joy of teacher is so much profound that you cannot really incentivize them in that, in a quoted way, incentivize, and, the better people will start coming there. It is a very different model. So I'd like to, maybe with the concerned people, I'd like to share my thoughts. And I will say that the self-awareness and inner journey is very, very important. So going in the right direction with a restful mind. Right now what is happening, where the whole society is going, you're running there with a restless mind. So therefore the restful mind and the right direction is what is needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pankajji. Restful mind. And before this talk actually comes to an end, there's just two things that I would want to share, which could be, part of just some food for thought.
May I add something before you move on?
Please.
Yeah. To what the gentleman, Mr. Dr. Pankaj Gupta just mentioned, while I gave one example of Finland, where the brilliant minds is the focus to be the teaching, to choose teaching as a profession. I had a very interesting interaction with the education minister of Singapore and the people who manage and run the entire teaching academy out over there. The biggest criteria over there on which teaching is evaluated and teaching as a profession is evaluated is they have a very unique model of testing for passion for teaching. So their entire premise on whether you are, so it's not I want to be a teacher. They first test you on your passion and they decide whether you are accepted as a teacher or not a teacher. So just kind of
passion testing your passion, that whether you can actually be a teacher if you have that degree of passion towards that profession. And yes, talking about passion, we end these shows with one story that comes from a teenager, because Blub World as a magazine works on a simple concept line of teens inspiring teens. We keep searching for teenagers who are doing great work in their life. Till date, we have showcased 300 such teenagers from across the globe. And to end, let me share a small story of one such teen who right now is 13 years old, lives in Melbourne, Australia, has been homeschooled, self-taught, inventive, had her first art gallery show at the age of 2. And at the age of 4, she had a solo show in one of the top leading art galleries in New York, had been invited for a solo show in the Royal Academy of Fine Arts Museum, Russia, which is one of the leading museums in Russia. And right now is just 13 years old and earns in millions and never went to a school. And that story is of Elita Andre. That's the cover page story of Blub World this month. And that's the way we work. Keep finding out teens who are doing great in life, because what we think, the only way moving ahead to create an active learner, the only way to do is to inspire. You cannot teach that. Thank you so much, people, for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks 77th episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please open your audio, say a big yes, and thank you so much for being a part of Blub World. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Blub World.
Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blub World. Thank you, honorable speakers. It was a wonderful experience to listen to all.